Welcome to the Heavyweights Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin Urban. To my right, I have the brains of the operation, Nik Klein. And we're the Heavyweights. We're going to be talking about some NFL football today. We're going to start off with the AFC Championship game. The Tennessee Titans lost to the Kansas City Chiefs 35-24. And they'll be moving on to the Super Bowl. What'd you think about the game, Nik?
Honestly, not really surprised. I know Titans had, honestly, probably one of the better roads to the AFC Championship, or with any championship, you can include the NFC. Tennessee grounds and pounds the ball with Derrick Henry. I mean, that's no secret. They've been playing well, but the Chiefs, at least in my opinion, were the best team going into the playoffs since week 10 or 11. I think they were only giving up about 10 points a game on defense. Mahomes was completely healthy, and they got Watkins back late. Obviously, Travis Kelce's still a monster. Mecole Hardman's had a great rookie year, and Tyreek Hill is just explosive. I think the only thing that surprised me, though, is if you would have told me that the Kansas City Chiefs would have outrushed the Titans by almost 40 or 50 yards. I can't remember exactly what it was. I had it pulled up. That I would have been a little surprised. I mean, I think it was Derrick Henry had, 6 rushing yards after halftime? Just completely, the game plan, whatever they had going into the second half, just completely shut them down, and then they got down quick because obviously it was the Mahomes show in the second quarter after the Titans got out to that 10-0 run, and they just ran away with it in the second half. It's like anything that Tennessee tried doing on defense, they couldn't stop. Mahomes, he was in the pocket, constantly flustered out, but he finished with 8 carries for 53 yards, including that a touchdown run. It was probably the best play in the playoffs so far. The end of the second quarter with less than a minute left, he had that 30-yard scramble or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, I'm not really surprised. I like Tennessee. I like the direction they're going. I think Kansas City, at least to me, the last 8 or 9 weeks have been the best team in the league. I don't know about you, though.
Yeah, my overall view of it was I was mostly impressed with Kansas City's defense, the way they committed to stop the run and didn't give up the big pass plays to Tennessee. I thought that was the biggest factor in the game, really. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and the offense did what they were going to do. Everybody thought they were going to do, really, and I don't know, their defense just came to play like they have most of the playoffs so far. So,
yeah, the slow start on the defense again. They let A.J. Brown get loose once early on, gave a couple good big plays, but it seemed like after that first quarter was over that they weren't giving up the big chunk, 5 to 6 yards a carry to Derrick Henry, which just opens up Tannehill, who's looked great all year ever since he was Mariota was benched for Tannehill. It was just, there wasn't those chunk plays down the field passing from Tannehill that seemed to be working against New England and against Baltimore. It was just, once again, that secondary I think is a little underrated for Kansas City. They were able to come in. Tyrann Mathieu, though, obviously we all know who he is and how good he's been for Houston last year in Arizona, and just was able to shut them down. He had a couple big plays, including that big hit. I think it was in the second or third quarter that seemed to just set the tone of that defense again.
That and Sorenstein, he made a lot of good plays.
He did have the hit on Tannehill. I remember that when Tannehill was trying to scramble. I can't remember if that was the second or third quarter, though.
I think it was in the third.
Okay. But, again, not surprised. I would have liked to have seen a more balanced attack from Kansas City. Obviously, they were in the ball decent, but that was mostly just Mahomes scrambling. Damian Williams still 2.6 yards per carry, 17 rushes for 45 yards. I mean, that's not going to cut it against San Francisco in the Super Bowl. It's just, but it's kind of hard to, it's give and take there when you have Mahomes, who was 23 or 35 for 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, and again, no interceptions. Quarterback rating over 120. It's just, he's been the player in these playoffs, at least with me. He's been the MVP.
I really think that's the biggest difference between the regular season and the playoffs here so far. Patrick's making more plays with his legs than I'm used to seeing. He's always extending the play, but I don't remember him getting such big rushing gains in crucial times for them.
Yeah, Tennessee obviously had a game plan coming in to get Mahomes out of the pocket and kind of get him a little flustered. That just completely backfired. He had that 60-yard bomb to Sammy Watkins.
Right.
And his ability to square up on the run and manipulate defenses down the field, it's almost like what Joe Burrow did this year for LSU. He can run in the pocket, but he never wants to take off down the field unless he absolutely has to. He's still looking to move the ball downfield. And we're just so used to these quarterbacks running once they get flushed out of the pocket because Mahomes has decent speed. It's just where he separates himself from almost every quarterback in this league is his ability to scramble and just adjust his body on the run and just throw some of the best throws we've seen in years. And he is completely carrying that offense, but their speed helps. And it's just Andy Reid, once again, I mean, great job. First time going to the Super Bowl in 15 years, the longest span between head coaches in NFL history. I think the last one was Dick Vermeil had to wait over 15 years as well when he went with the Eagles, the early 80s, and didn't go back until it was St. Louis in 99. So, I mean, congrats to him, too. I mean, that is one of the best head coaches we've seen in the last 20 years. We've seen what he's done with Philly. We've seen what he's been able to do with Kansas City. And I think he deserves a Super Bowl ring or just to get back there and get another shot at it. But as for right now, I mean, Tennessee, where do you think they go next year as far as what are their plans in the offseason? Do you see them? Well, we can address, I guess the best place to start it is because the NFL draft's not until April. Free agency. They've got some big names they've got to make some big decisions on this year. Logan Ryan, one of their starting corners. Tannehill, obviously, his contract is up along with Mariota. Derrick Henry is probably their biggest one that everybody's going to be talking about.
He's their number one, has to be. They got to figure that out.
I'm torn. Do you pay him $10 to $12 million a year over the next 3 to 4 years, guaranteed?
If it's 10 to 12, yes. But if he wants $15 million like Zeke Elliott, I don't see where you could justify paying him that much. I understand he's had into last year he had a good run, and then into this season he had a good run, but.
Yeah, a little over 1,300 yards.
But for his whole career, you can't just pay a guy $15 million off of what?
Well, I mean, you can look at it that way, but you can look at it as last year they finally decided to give him the ball and make him the every down back dang near. And once he took over that starting spot over Deion Lewis last year, it's been the Derrick Henry show. I mean, the last 8 games in this year, including playoffs, he had over 1,300 yards rushing. He is their offense. He's what makes it go. But he's going to
hinder your future if you pay him.
He's 26,
more than $12 million.
Yeah, that's got to. Obviously, I think they're going to resign him no matter what. You have to. He is your number one target going into free agency. But the biggest thing here is I believe that they let Marcus Mariota walk. There's no reason to bring him back.
There's absolutely no way they bring him back.
But you bring Tannehill back maybe on a Kirk Cousins type deal, 2 to 3 years, $60 million guaranteed. And let him continue to develop because he looked at times really good this year. I wouldn't say elite, but a top 15 quarterback. I mean, he obviously got you the AFC Championship, and it wasn't just because he was handing off the ball the entire time. He's found a favorite target in A.J. Brown. Corey Davis, the former number 5 overall pick out of Central Michigan, hasn't done anything the last 3 years to show you anything, so they've got to get him help. But then they've also got their right tackle, Jack Conklin, who really hasn't played well since his rookie year.
But this year he played his best he's played.
He was all pro his rookie year. I need to pull it up at some point. He's usually high up in the league in holding calls. I think he's okay, but offensive tackles don't rarely go on the free agent market where you consider a top end, and he might be considered top 10 at his position at right tackle. So you're looking at $30 to $45 million guaranteed over 3 to 4 years. That's a hard one.
And they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, which tells you a lot of what they might think about him moving forward. Possibly, but he didn't have the best year this year, but he had one of his best years.
Yeah, he did. And usually that is a good indication that, they're not picking up their 5th-year option. They're going to let you go, which is what I think they're going to do. But they didn't take a single tackle in the draft last year. They took a guard who can be guard or center out of Charlotte in the 3rd round, I believe, last year. There's just so many so many things that come into play with that. If it's a team-friendly deal for 1 or 2 years, maybe. It all depends on what his market is on the open market, how many right tackles are in need. Wesley Woodyard's option is up. He's been a leader of that defense for the last couple of years, but you do have their first-round draft pick last year out of Alabama, the linebacker. Oh boy, that's not coming to my head right now. Rashawn. He's the kid that at high school that had the Auburn tattoo and then committed to Auburn and flipped his commitment late to Alabama.
I haven't heard about him, to be honest.
He had 111 tackles this year. He'll be in his third year coming in. Obviously, it's his team. Him and Harold Landry, who was their first-round pick, I think, in 2017 out of Boston College. But they've got some pieces there. Obviously, Byard, safety, is one of the most underrated players in the league. Should have been a first selection into the Pro Bowl. Got snubbed because we all know this Pro Bowl's a joke. But their draft classes the last few years haven't really impressed me. They haven't gotten key contributors, and usually I don't care about the first round. Yes, you can hit and miss there, but the depth that you get. And I like the Jeffrey Simmons pick this year. What I didn't like is that he didn't come back until the playoffs or the last week of the season. Rashawn Evans, the linebacker, it finally came to me. You've got some decisions to make. Obviously, A.J. Brown was a great pick, but the draft, if we're going into this year, I think you need, number one, should be getting Tannehill help because we know they're going to bring him back. You're going to have Derrick Henry and you're going to have A.J. Brown on the slot. Delaney Walker's, it seems like he's been playing in the league since.
And he got hurt to end the year, so
since 1995.
It might be time for him to hang it up, but
I think you can
see maybe come back one more year.
Yeah, and he's a nice security blanket, but I think the number one target for them in the draft is going to have to be getting Tannehill more help, whether that be the offensive line or receiver. But where you're drafting at right now, I want to say they're going to be drafting 29th overall. It's also a trade back spot if you want to grab more depth. If a quarterback drops, say Justin Herbert for some reason keeps dropping. I mean, we have so much time until then. We have the combine and everything. But
with Conklin, if they don't re-sign him, though, I could see them going after a tackle in the first round. But this year isn't very deep at tackle. So
Tristan Wirfs seems to be the consensus right now. I think the first overall tackle off the board out of Iowa. I know there's another one, and it's not coming to my head right now. Obviously, these things will change. I mean, you have the Senior Bowl this weekend that could bring another name up the list. You might be able to get a nice right tackle or left tackle project late round 2, or if you slide back and trade your pick. I mean, if I had to guess right now, though, I think they bring Conklin back, but I mean, it's still not going to hurt to have another tackle or guard spot, depending on how this draft falls. But this draft is completely receiver heavy. There's some decent edge rushers that could be dropping, which you could use too, even though you're going to get your first full year next year from Jeffrey Simmons. You got Harold Landry coming back. But there are some questions. But right now, with bringing back Tannehill, they're going to bring back Henry, even though I don't think the price is right if you pay him too much. If you pay him as a top 5 back, they're going to have some weapons. They're going to be able to compete next year in the AFC South. We have no idea what's going to happen with the Colts with Jacoby Brissett. Jacksonville looks completely lost now. They're trading almost all their players away. The defense isn't where it nearly was when they made the AFC Championship game 3 years ago.
We'll see if people want to come there now that Tom Coughlin's gone. So everything's up in the air with them, really. I mean, they're probably not going to be back to the AFC title game status, but...
No, and that's a whole other discussion. We can do draft predictions later, but Houston's going to be able to compete for years. I mean, they've still got 5 or 6 guys that are elite at their positions. They've got Tunzel now, their franchise left tackle.
They're a couple pieces away.
But they also don't have their first 3-round draft picks this year.
Right.
They've traded almost everything away. They have some key questions if they're going to bring back Fuller, if he can stay healthy or not. But they've got Deshaun Watson. They've got one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. For years to come. I mean, so the future does look bright for Tennessee. It's just there's some major questions going in. I think more than what we would say from the loser of the NFC Championship game Because obviously we know San Francisco beat Green Bay Sunday night 37-20, and that final score doesn't make it look nearly as close or nearly as bad as what it was. I don't think Green Bay was ever in control of that game. They had some moments in the second quarter, maybe part of the third, but they could never get anything going. That defensive front line for San Francisco just ate up Green Bay all day.
Nick Bosa is an absolute beast. Eric Armstead, he's going to be a free agent coming up, and I'm interested to see what happens with him moving forward. But that defensive line for San Francisco is just next level. There's not many in the NFL that could even think about touching them.
Well, that's usually what happens when you have, I think, 4 top 10 picks in the first round on your defensive line.
Plus D Ford, I don't know when he was drafted, but he's
second round, I believe, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But Nick Bosa looks every bit as advertised, the best player coming out of the draft last year, just falling into their lap. They've had some success in the last recent years with drafting. They've done a really good job. Deebo Samuel, obviously the second round draft pick. George Kittle's only going to be entering in his 4th year. Traded for Emmanuel Sanders, but that defense is what fuels this team. I think obviously Richard Sherman had a bounce back year. We know that. He still didn't look the best at times in that game, but he's gotten better throughout the year. Obviously made the Pro Bowl. The biggest key for them, I think, going into the defense, and they're going to be happy going into the Super Bowl, is they got Quan Alexander back after he tore his pec in October. Another completely underrated linebacker for years down in Tampa Bay. He's their guy. He's the leader of that defense. Their biggest question, though, is I don't think I've ever seen a game like this. Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball 8 times, only had 6 completions. If he has to throw the ball in the Super Bowl, I'd get a little concerned. But you don't need to when you have Raheem Mostert, the undrafted free agent that came over from Chicago and went to college at Purdue and was one of 4 players of all time have over 200 yards rushing in the playoffs, and one of 3, I believe, that have 4 more touchdowns, joining Garrison Hurst. And I'm not sure the other off the top of my head, but just what an unbelievable game. It just seemed like they couldn't stop them from running the same play over and over and over through that entire game.
And usually with the injury to Tevin Coleman, you would think their running game would suffer, but the way he ran the ball in the second half and the first half was just the Packers couldn't do anything with them, and that's why they could never get it rolling. Plus the turnovers they had in the first half. The fumble when they were moving down into scoring position, when Aaron Rodgers fumbled the snap, the interceptions, they were just timely plays by the 49ers to never let the Packers really gain any momentum.
Yeah, and what I would have thought that this matchup was also perfect for Green Bay. I know San Francisco was a heavy favorite, and a lot of people liked them. I personally liked Green Bay going into this game because they've ran the ball all year well, and their defense, the 2 biggest things for Green Bay's defense is getting the Smiths, both Preston and Zaire, and they got Blake Martinez and Zadarius. They had led that defense all year. Darnell Savage is a great rookie out of Mississippi State. They got late in the first round. They traded back up. They were meant for this game because they literally took Jimmy Garoppolo away out of it, but they couldn't slow them down from running the ball.
When a guy rushes for 220 yards as a quarterback, you're not more than likely going to have to do too much to win that game.
No, but you tell me if this was going to be a battle in the trenches.
8 passes.
I'm not talking about the 285-yard total rushing yards that San Francisco had. If it had to come down to a game where a quarterback had to make a play, you're obviously going to put that ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands.
Right, 100%.
He didn't look at times great this year, and he looked extremely sloppy on Sunday night. But I still liked Green Bay's chances in this. Aaron Jones led the league in rushing touchdowns with 18. You thought he would be able to do something. Devontae Adams got going like always, but it's been the same thing for Green Bay all year. Who is their number 2 receiving threat? And it has been up and down all year. Jimmy Graham's looked good at times, then disappears for a couple weeks. Green Bay has to find more outside weapons. They drafted 3 receivers in 2018. Aquania St. Brown, I think Geronimo Allison maybe, and I can't think of the other one. They were all 4th or later round picks, but they haven't done anything. They haven't basically produced anything. It's been up and down. you had a chance in the first round this year, I think, to trade back and get a receiver late. Like, you also could have taken DK Metcalf in the second round. I know Donovan Savage was great, but their first round pick, Rashawn Gary,
where has he been? I mean, I know the Smith brothers have been just tearing it up for them this year and been the biggest difference makers on that defense, I think everybody could say. But he's got to be – you got to be wondering what he's going to do going into the future.
I think he only played 256 defensive snaps this year, which, doesn't sound bad on paper, but when you're drafted 12th overall, you're expected to come in and be that franchise linebacker right away. We saw what Devin Bush was able to do in Pittsburgh, and you saw what Tampa Bay had in their linebacker, who was 5th overall. Both ended up making the Pro Bowl.
White from LSU.
Yeah. Both are just playmakers and all over the field. And Rashawn Gary, comes in, I think, 2016 to Michigan, the number 1 recruit in the country, and had flashes, and I think that's why Green Bay took him. But we didn't see it this year, and you hope that's not the case. You don't ever want a player to be a bust, but it's not looking good for them. I think that they've got some questions in the offseason. Obviously, they've still got Aaron Rodgers, and he said the other day that, their window's still open, and they've got a good young head coach. But I believe Aaron Jones is a free agent at the end of this year. But they've got some key questions. I mean, they got Blake Martinez, his contract.
He's their best defensive player.
Tramon Williams is up there. I think it's time for him to go. I mean, it seems like he's been there for ages. But they've going Brian Beluga. They're also another, just like the Titans, their right tackle, who battled some major injuries this year. It looks like they're going to have to make a decision on that. I mean, they've got David McCarty, who's one of the best left tackles in the league, and so they've got a good basis for their offensive line. But it seems like their unrestricted free agents coming up aren't nearly as bad as what Tennessee has to deal with. One of their bigger questions is going to be, do they bring back Mason Crosby? He had a better year this year. 2 years ago, it seemed like he couldn't make a kick to save his life.
Right.
Their needs, I still think, almost like is you've got to get more weapons for Aaron Rodgers, but another would be an interior defensive tackle that can rush the passer, because they have some speed and potential on that defense, is getting someone in that middle or another corner, because they've wasted. Jair Alexander was their first round pick in 2018, and they took King in the second round, who has gotten better. He looks like a good slot corner, but he's not their number 2. It's where do they go from here? They need some help on the outside. We'll get into the draft later on in another podcast, but they've got some major questions coming up. I mean,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't think you can let Blake Martinez walk out of the building, though. He makes every play besides, the sacks from the Smith brothers. He's just there. He's their version of Darius Leonard, if you're a Colts fan. I mean, he doesn't make like the interceptions and as many fumbles, but he's all over the field. For a 4th round draft pick, he's one guy I would be definitely hanging on to if I'm Green Bay.
Oh, I most certainly think you bring him back. I don't think there's a question about that. It's just how much money are you willing to lock up?
Right.
For him, it's got to be a team-friendly deal. I mean, he's only 26, so he played over 1,000 snaps last year, which seems like almost every down. It's just you outside of that, though, you've got your linebacker spots locked in. You don't have a premier edge rusher. Preston Smith, maybe, because I'm trying to think of who led them in sacks. Can they get to the ball?
I think it was Za'Darius.
Okay. I think this draft class is going to be super deep at wide receiver. Obviously, you're not going to draft until the 30th in the first round. Where do you go from there? Do you want to target offense? You can always trade back. It'll start with the free agents. You can bring back Beluga if you want, but it all depends on the Flores said publicly. When he had that interview that he wanted them to rush the ball and play stout defense, and their defense at times looked elite this year. They had some games where they disappeared, but you have with Preston Smith and Za'Darius Smith combined almost over 25 sacks. But outside of that, I mean, Kenny Clark, decent year in the interior, but where do you go from there? I don't know. There's a lot of areas they can improve on, but that's just my opinion. I don't know where you see it.
I think you're right. They obviously need some help stopping the run because, I mean, not every team can run it like San Francisco, obviously. They're one of the most, if not the most elite team. I mean, I know the Ravens are the most elite team running the football, but the way that the 49ers run the ball is pretty impressive. And you got, I believe that they have to go after a wide receiver, whether that be CeeDee Lamb if he's there or somebody like one of the LSU receivers. They have to get, like you said, get Aaron Rodgers another weapon.
I wouldn't mind that. Like I said, also, I mean, corner. I would look at corner. Kevin King, like I said, he struggled on Sunday. You saw that. He's a decent slot corner, but he doesn't seem to match up on the outside that well right now. Jair Alexander looks like he's going to be their number one. It's just drafting so late in that first round, basically almost early second round there. It's how the draft falls. I mean, you're getting some steals there. You got teams that want to trade back up in, which they did last year. What do you have to give up for that? It's usually a second or third rounder, depending on how much they're jumping up from the second round. But it'll be interesting to see where they go. But for me, we can flip the script and go back to the 49ers, how they've got some weapons. They looked completely dominant that entire game. That defense, they've given up almost nothing. It seems like big plays this year. It doesn't seem like they give up anything. This Super Bowl matchup, we'll get into more of that next week, is going to be one of the better ones I think we've had in years. The only thing that scares me is it almost reminds me of the Seattle-Denver Super Bowl a few years back, where you had a prolific offense coming in against a historically good defense. I don't think it's going to be hyped up that much, obviously, because that was the year Peyton threw 55 touchdowns, and you had the Legion of Boom. And as great as Richard Sherman is now, he's not anywhere near the level he was back then. But will the 49ers have enough weapons to challenge the Chiefs if the game gets into the low 30s? I know they've done it this year. They played the Saints. That was a high-scoring game. It'll just be interesting. I know right now Vegas has got it as a 1-point favorite for Kansas City, which I think is right. I just don't see anybody slowing down Mahomes, but we'll see.
I like the 49ers' chances. The way they run the football is different than the way the Titans run the football. So I think if the Chiefs can stop the run, if you put the ball in Jimmy Garoppolo's hands, the biggest question is, can he make the plays to win the big game? So we haven't seen that in the playoffs because of the way they've ran the football and played defense. So I don't know going forward how the Chiefs are going to address that run game, but I'm interested to see what they do because the 49ers have some weapons passing the football, but they're not anywhere near what the Chiefs have. And if the Chiefs' defense comes to play, I think it could be a pretty bad day for the 49ers.
I think the 49ers think they have a blueprint similar to what Tennessee will want to do, is what they wanted to get Mahomes out of the pocket. But that defensive line, we know what it is for San Francisco. They can get after him. Is if they try to force Mahomes to stay in the pocket, I think that'll be the end of them if they try to do that. I mean, we'll get into more of that next week, but it'll be interesting. Right now, I think that we got the game coming next week, but it's just there's so much going on. I mean, we got media day next week. It'll be interesting. A lot of this will. Right now, though, we're going to get into our next segment. We're going to start doing this at the end of every podcast every week. Dustin's going to have a six-pack of just random trivia questions.
Nick's got a big brain, so we're going to see if we can try to stump him a little bit. So, with the first question I got for you is, who were the two quarterbacks to lead their teams in rushing this year?
Lamar Jackson and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Damn, he got it right off the bat. All right. What player has the most sacks in NFL history on one specific quarterback?
On one specific quarterback?
Yeah.
Do you play this year?
Oh, yeah. It's from – the record was set this year.
Like of all time against one quarterback?
Yep.
Man. Yeah, you're gonna say it. It's gonna piss me.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and piss you off. I'll give you 5 seconds.
Go ahead.
Cameron Jordan, 18 on Matt Ryan.
Okay.
All right. My next one is, who are the only two rookie quarterbacks to pass for 3,500 yards and rush for 500 yards?
Kyler Murray. Pass for 3,500, rush for 500.
Yep.
One of them's Kyler Murray, though, right?
Oh, for sure. I can't believe you guessed that one off the bat, but
I mean, he had a solid year. Is it recently?
within the last 10 years. Maybe actually 10, but
Cam Newton.
yeah, that gave it away probably a little bit, but
I don't know why Cam Newton didn't come to my mind.
I don't think you're going to get this one. This one was pretty hard. Who was the only player to catch a touchdown pass for the Bills in the 2018 season and the 2019 season?
It wouldn't have been Darius Slayton because he was a rookie this year.
No.
I know. Yeah, because they overhauled their entire receiving staff. And Gore was in Miami last year.
I couldn't believe this.
Gore was in Miami last year.
McCoy got traded.
That was a while ago. I don't know.
Left tackle Deion Dawkins.
Yeah, like I'm going to get that.
Yeah, I was trying to get something that you won't get. All right. Who is the only player in NFL history with 2 seasons of 100 tackles before the age of 21?
Darius Leonard.
No.
Oh, 21.
Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Virginia Tech.
The last one. Who's the oldest player to lead his team in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns?
The oldest player? Off the top of my head, it'd have to be Frank Gore.
Nope.
Ryan Fitzpatrick then because of Miami?
It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I couldn't believe he got to the touchdowns, but second and third place was Marcus Allen, and then fourth, Emmitt Smith, fifth, John Riggins. So
Miami's a damn mess down there.
at least got you on one or two of them. That was my main goal. I didn't think you'd get the offensive line one.
No, and I knew that Buffalo had completely replenished almost their entire offense, their receivers, and Gore wasn't there last year, so that would have been my only guess.
Right.
Because they drafted David Singletary. All right, well, that's it for our first podcast. Thanks for listening. They'll obviously get better. But we hope you enjoyed listening. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you.